Glorious. Glorious.
Light roast. A lot of people don't know this. Light roast actually has more caffeine.
I do know that.
You do know this.
Because
But there might be listeners who
I'm
don't
allergic
know this.
to that level
Light
of
roast
caffeine.
has more caffeine. What's in your cup, Laci?
Matcha.
Matcha.
Yeah.
Why?
Watered down, ice melted matcha.
Why do you like matcha?
It is superior. And I have successfully converted people to matcha who have reported back that they feel great, even though they hate the way it tastes.
All right, so today we're talking about calling. When we talk about calling, what often comes to mind is, what's our purpose? What are we going to do? What does God want me to do with my life? What has he called me to do, right? My story is that I had a dream when I was 6 years old. And I won't go into detail about the dream, but I had a dream in 6 years old in which God showed me that he had called me. He had set me apart to serve him. And it really impacted me. I woke up from the dream and I understood the meaning. And that dream, 6 years old, still today carries a ton of meaning and is very significant for me.
It's amazing.
So then I was older, in my teenage years, and I started to have different kinds of dreams and visions and things that, God's showing me what is going to happen in my life, what I'm called to, right? It's all about missions. There's war zones happening there. There's tons of people getting healed, tons of people getting saved, all things that I have experienced now in adulthood. And so he's speaking to me very clearly, very prophetically, And I remember when I was going to ministry school as well, like I had a dream. This has often been the case, as you know, like my relationship with God, when there's a major change coming, God often gives me a dream, and then that dream literally plays out.
I feel like we're always waiting for you to have dreams when it comes to major decisions, which I find maddening, but mostly because I already know, and you're like, I must have my dream.
I must have my dream.
Yeah, which is amazing. It's the way God has always spoken to you, and we should expect nothing less. But
it's interesting. It's interesting. Little side note here. We're married, and so there's actually been times when I'm waiting for a dream, and God actually has given you the dream.
I don't recall that.
I do. It has happened.
I don't remember this.
Remembering this.
I don't have dreams. I have words.
Got to Phuket.
Ah, yes. Okay, well, that's pretty major.
Hello. Yeah, major. We've been living here for 10 years.
That's very major.
So he'll give me a dream. Like I remember this one time, I was praying about where to go to ministry school and that kind of thing. And I had a dream where I was there in the administrative office of that school before I had really committed to going. And in that dream, I met the woman who is in charge of school administration.
I forgot about this.
And I'm sitting there in the waiting area, and this guy comes in, and he is just like blasted in the Holy Spirit. He's just laughing and like, wow. He's like, as soon as I walked in here, I just had to start speaking in tongues. And he grabbed me, and we're just like overwhelmed by the presence of God. And I woke up and I could feel the presence of God just really heavy in my room coming out of that dream. And what was crazy is then I got to school and it came to registration time, and I was standing in line at the check-in table for registration. I got there and I saw the woman from my dream, and I said, it was Kathy Valentin. And I looked at her, I was like, I saw you in a dream before I got here. And
she's like, of course.
She's like, okay.
Seems
and
right.
Then moved on to the paperwork. I'm like, yeah, this is apparently normal for her. Yes. Probably, I assume.
Yeah, I would guess.
But then after that, everything from the dream literally happened. Like the guy who grabbed me in my dream literally came up to me in worship on the first day, and just like, it was amazing. It was every single thing from that dream played out in the first day or two of class. And so it's like, this is how the Lord's leading me, is like these, confirmations and words and this kind of thing.
So would you say then that you experience all of that as the calling, or is it confirmation of some other thing that has that you've already experienced calling you.
Well, so what I'm talking about with
Or
this
yeah,
is the when we're thinking of calling in the traditional sense, which is what am I meant to do?
right.
Here's been my experience of getting that. And I knew from a young, very, very young age that I was called to serve the Lord. I knew I was called to missions
Yeah.
overseas. I knew, conflict zones are a part of it. I knew that the unreached are part of it. I knew that, evangelism and signs and wonders are part of it from my childhood because of how he has spoken to me in those times.
Hmm.
And so I've literally been on the same track in life from early childhood up to today.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
been very, very consistent,
it's,
right?
it's very, I mean,
Yeah.
we've known each other for, wow, a long time. I can't even do that math. I think more
Over
than
20
half,
years,
I
but
think more
yeah.
than half our lives, like we've
For
been
yeah,
very,
way over half our lives.
but I'm saying like we've been very close, like
Hmm.
best friends first, then we, dated and all of that. But yes, that would be true of you. I have always experienced you as that, or God's like hand on your life as very consistent and unchanging during
Yes.
that entire time,
And
and the
even
way He speaks to you.
and for me, even my sense of purpose and what
Yes,
I'm supposed to
always.
do
Yes,
has been very clear
yeah.
for a long
From the
time.
beginning, always, forever. Like from the moment I've met you. Yes.
So what about you? What's your experience with
You
that?
know my experience
I
with
do know your
this.
experience with that.
I love that question. uh, Mine is not like that, actually. You know this about me. My experience of being called. Um, I really wrestled actually as a teenager with what my calling was. I knew the things that I found joy in. I knew I had ideas and dreams. Everything that God and I had talked about over the course of my life, or since I can remember having conversations with God about things, were largely around uh, my relationship with him. And I had vision for the future in the sense that I knew that he was calling me to like follow him,
Hmm.
but I didn't have a clear place. I especially did not feel called to missions, which actually that my perception of what a calling was, I think probably also endangered our relationship for a season
Well,
as
can we
well.
just rabbit trail on that a little bit? Because I remember in those years, like you said, we've been together for a very long time. We've been in each other's lives for a very long time. And I can look back at some of those years, like in high school and that kind of thing, and it seemed like you were looking for that purpose-based calling of
Yes.
this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yes.
You're like
Yes.
grasping for that.
Yes. I
And
think
that actually even led to some confusion
I
for you.
think identity crisis. If I'm being dramatic, sounding dramatic, but I think legitimately it led to identity crisis where I was surrounded. I mean, I went to tons of youth conferences. There's all these things that in that, in the like evangelical church, probably another as well, but that's my experience, right? Is this like driving thing of what is your calling. Also, don't marry somebody if your callings are opposed to each other, and different things like that. And because I didn't have that kind of really clear cut thing, and then I was also really close to you and seeing that you did, I think it led to feeling like I'm not hearing God. I don't know where he's telling me to go, what he wants me to do. It's not clear cut. It's not, I don't know. I know like for seasons,
Hmm.
but I don't know for like the long haul.
Hmm.
And it led me to identity crisis. It caused us to break up at one point because I was like, well, you're called to missions and I don't
Specifically
have.
caused you to break up with me.
Yes, I broke up with
Yes,
you because
that's right.
because I was so afraid that I was going to derail your calling, or that our callings were opposed. And it was like, again, that happened after a big youth conference that I attended. And I just
Yeah,
didn't want
that's right.
I didn't want to distract you. Um, but that was coming from like such a genuine place, right? Like for me, it was like a sacrifice, but I just didn't want to be going down this is so cute. We were so young. Like we literally got together. I'm like, this is the person I'm going to marry. Like I won't date you unless we're married each other. So like it was really a big deal to me. And I was like, I didn't want to, I struggled for years after that. And even into like young adulthood.
Which
What
for
is my calling?
if somebody's listening who doesn't know us well, we started dating in high school.
Yeah.
So we're high school sweethearts.
Yeah. We dated when I was 15 was yeah. And then
Yeah,
I broke up with him.
that's right.
We broke up. I broke up with him. And then we got back together because that was a stupid reason to break up. And yeah, so for me, when I I think calling ended up being a journey for me. Discovering calling ended up being a journey for me. And I have found that for me, my calling came in seasons, like my to do, what you're doing, right?
Hmm.
This is what you're doing. So I wanted to differentiate this. To me, feels different, and this is personally from the calling. And the doing for me came in seasons. Like God would give me vision for a season of what I'm supposed to do.
So for you and I, we've been in Asia for 11 years.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about so my process with that was I had a dream about a certain place in Asia, and then there was all these prophetic confirmations that lined up
Yes.
with that, and I'm like, I'm going to that place
Yeah.
to do this thing.
Yeah.
It was very like
Lots.
clear
Yeah.
cut. Your journey was very different than
So
that.
different. Yeah. My journey with that was very different. And I think we've all also just to like touch on something different for just a second, like that was when we were married.
Hmm.
But even in that, we have recognized over the years how God speaks to us differently,
Hmm.
and we've learned to like either wait for confirmation or hear the Lord say like, "Hey, we're gonna go. I already spoke to Joel. Like, go for it." Or I already spoke to Laci. We're gonna do this.
Hmm.
But most of the time, we are very. I feel like we're patient. We understand that we have to. We have to wait for the other one to hear how they hear. And so this was a
Yeah.
situation where like you were hearing a lot of things, and I was like, okay, God's gonna speak to me if that's the right thing.
Our relationship with God are
Yeah,
they function very differently. They look
yeah,
very different from each other.
yeah. I think we're both highly accepting of that and
Hmm.
celebrating that actually. Although it at different points has been like challenging with certain decisions that we made stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you have to find a way to come together
Yeah,
from these two different
yeah.
angles.
And I think that's important, and I'm going to address that in a minute and why that's important. But the way that okay, when it came to Asia and us moving there, the way that you heard was very clear cut, very directional, very like dreams, actually God speaking and saying this. And I I heard one thing. I heard God say, "Will you come be with me there?" And I said, hold that thought. Because the place that he had asked us to go, I had always said internally, like, anywhere but there, please.
A
Thanks.
dangerous
No,
thing to
it wasn't,
say.
it is dangerous, but it was coming from, anyways, it's dangerous. It's a whole other podcast. Dangerous thing to say to the Lord, or is it?
Fun thing to say to
Is
the
a
Lord. Maybe
great
it's a
thing to say
fun
to the
thing to
Lord.
say to the Lord.
Say those
Maybe
things
it's
to
a
the Lord.
freeing thing to say to the Lord. Wow.
Maybe it's yeah, maybe that's the secret. But anyways, he had asked me to come be with him, and so there was no. It was really personal, which is how he speaks to me. It's very personal like that, and I wanted to be sure. I knew he was asking me for something, and I knew that there was a depth and a relational thing that he was pulling on with me in that moment, and I knew I have my yes has to be yes. I have to make this yes, and I somehow I think I knew that deep down this was an all encompassing yes of like if I say this, it's yes until whenever you say, and there was a weight to it, and I did take a week to accept that invitation. And it's not because I wasn't compelled by my love for him. It's I really wanted to make a it was like making a vow for me.
I
And
actually remember that week, and you said to me, I want to make sure that I'm giving a real yes. That's not why you were like, I remember this. You were like, I could just say a yes, but I'm not confident that would be coming from the deepest parts of me.
mm,
So you took time. I remember this. You took time to go through those deep
mm,
parts and get a yes. Like you're like gathering
I'm
your
gathering the
yes
yes.
from all those deep
Yeah.
places in you to give it
Yeah.
to the
Because
Lord
of course
so
it's
that
a
you could
yes.
know with integrity that you're giving it wholeheartedly.
Right.
I
It's
thought that
like
was really interesting.
it's right. It's giving like it's giving a mental yes, right? Like we all know the answer to the right answer to the question, but when it comes to actually like feeling that yes, because that to me that yes is massive,
Hmm.
and I want to make sure that I'm backing it up with my heart. But yeah, so for me, the call to Asia was extremely intimate, and it was being not being called to a people group, not being called to a geographic place. Even in that moment, it really was being called to God
Hmm.
and being called to Him as a person. And I would say that, of course, in teenage years and leading up to this point, um, that question of what is your calling led me to an identity crisis, because for me, if the calling wasn't completely grounded in the person of Jesus for me and being called to him, then I there was nothing there.
He says,
Mm-hmm.
will you come be with me in this place?
Mm-hmm. And I would say
You say,
that is my
yes,
life.
yes, I will.
Yes, that is my whole life.
So for you now, having gone through what you've gone through, how do you define calling now that is different than, let's say, 20 years ago?
I would say that now I see I'm like I view calling as the voice of God and as the person of Jesus. So I'm like, let's emphasize not the assignment as much as the calling is.
You're called to Jesus.
I think
You're called to God.
every person is called to God. That's what I believe that scripture backs that up. Like we are our primary purpose is existing for God, right?
Mhm.
And out of that, there's an overflow. And for me, I think God knew like I needed to have blinders like on him no matter what. And then in seasons, he tells me what to do.
Mhm.
But like my calling is only significant because of the mouth it's coming from, right? Like the voice that is calling. It's not the thing that he's saying to do. It's because it's coming from him. And like because it's coming from him, I'll do anything.
Because it's you, I'm saying yes.
Yes, because
Doesn't
it's
matter
you.
what it is,
And I and
matters
I
who's saying
and
it.
I will practice over and over and over again, digging up that yes from like every corner of myself.
Hmm.
And if it costs me everything,
Hmm.
I do not care. But it's because of him. And therefore I never have a crisis internally about, is this me? That you're like, is what you're saying telling me to do actually me? Or like, what is my calling? I'm like, no, he's gonna tell me, because it's him, it's a person. I'm called to you, even if it looks really different than what I expected. You are it.
So I remember earlier this year, several months ago, I was spending time with a friend, and this guy, we've known each other for probably 10 to 12 years, and I know him from one country where he was doing one thing. Now he's in a different country doing a different thing. He's pretty high up in this large international organization now. He wasn't at that time. But he and I were sitting and talking in a coffee shop earlier this year, and he said something. He said my perspective. He said that his perspective on calling had shifted, and now he sees his calling as he's called to God. God is his calling, and I love that. I'm called to God,
Yeah.
but within that, there are assignments.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm called to God, but God has assignments.
Mm-hmm.
And so those assignments they can actually be seasonal. For this season, my assignment is this.
Yeah.
I'm called to God. Right now, my assignment is this.
Mm-hmm.
And at such a time that the Lord deems appropriate, he will give me a new assignment
Yeah.
somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, talking about the missions world, there's there's a common mindset that's, you've got to be called to a certain place, a certain people group, and this is a lifetime thing. You're like, I am giving the rest of my life for this place and this people group, which I'm not saying that that's wrong, and I'm not saying that people are hearing incorrectly, when they do that. But I am saying that it's a pattern that I don't think shows up in the Bible. Paul, I mean, he was called to the Gentiles. That's pretty broad, but there's so many different places, right, that he would go. Jesus said, if a city rejects you, what do? You shake the dust off your feet and go to the next city because you're called to Jesus. Your assignment is that city. But when you get rejected, you shake the dust off your feet and go to the next city. So it's interesting that in the missions movement today, the default position has become you're called to a place and a people group for the rest of your life. And then what happens is, let's say that something happens where you can't be in the country that you feel called to anymore. And we've seen this happen. And it can be just a total loss of identity. You get kicked out of that country, or something happens where you can't be there anymore, and you're just adrift, right? You're like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what my purpose is. My whole calling just got shipwrecked, and that kind of thing, which is interesting because that actually was more or less this friend of ours. This was his experience, more or less. And for him, it was okay. So my assignment has shifted. Calling stays the same. I love that.
Yeah.
You know,
I think it's an important distinction because with calling and with and differentiating between your calling and your assignment, I think where the getting the calling correctly is what was giving me so much stress in my young adulthood.
I don't want to miss it.
I don't want to get this wrong. And so then
Yeah.
what do you end up doing actually when you feel like crippled by fear that you don't know? You haven't had a clear word about where to go, and you're like, oh, I just don't have a clear sense and I don't know what to do, and you just feel like I think a lot of people freeze in that place, or they go somewhere because they're like, well, I feel like maybe, and but then they're still like constantly weird. And we've had a lot of people come through here, even like interns and things like that, who've really struggled with I'm not sure where I'm called to,
Mhm.
and I'm really afraid that I'm not hearing correctly and that I'm not doing what God wants and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, okay, this is an example of where the calling has taken precedence over like the person. And it's if you don't know for the rest of your life where you're supposed to do or the direction for the rest of your life, like that's okay. Like what is it today? Like
Yeah.
if you need to boil it back, like boil it back down to God, I'm available the next 5 minutes because it's about you. It's about your presence. It's about the person of Jesus. It's about following him. This is
You're not saying, and then after 5 minutes, I'm checked out. You're
no,
you're
it's like,
saying
and then
like
the next
right
5 minutes,
right
and then the
now,
next, and
God,
he, like
I'm available.
practice in small things, and
Yeah.
practice and recognizing that, like, okay, we are not like he no longer does he call us servants, he calls us friends. Like we're in a relationship where he's our father and he's leading us and he's walking with us, and it's about that connection. Like it's not like we have suddenly arrived at knowing everything and we're like have to get it right, we're being tested, and we're gonna have a pass or fail. No, like we are still his children, and he's a good father who's gonna walk with us through every season of our life. And so to me, that fear of like, oh, I'm going to get it wrong and then I'm going to be wasting my life, that's gone now because I feel called to God, and like I have practiced the most just surrendering to him and to the person. And then that has led me into what we do.
So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I think for a lot of us, maybe in particular in the charismatic church, right? We've maybe made you use whatever term you want, calling or assignment. It's almost like we've made it too spiritual. Like people get hung up on, should I be a dentist or go into real estate or be a pastor? Like, what job does God want me to do? I remember one time hearing Bill Johnson say something to the effect of, look at what's written in the Bible. right? The commands of Jesus: heal the sick, raise the dead, cast out demons, make disciples of every
Love
nation,
your
love
enemies.
your enemy, love your neighbor, give to the poor, give to Caesar. These kinds of things. Do that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Do that stuff, and then do whatever you want. Like your job, we get so, I think sometimes we get hung up on what's the job, what's the vocational thing, what's the occupational thing, and we actually completely miss what's written down. Again, talking about what am I supposed to do, using whatever
Mm-hmm.
term you want, your assignment, your calling, whatever you want to do. But do what's written.
Yeah.
And then what's actually going to happen is, as you do what's written, you obey what he's said, then the other stuff tends to kind of fall into
Your
place.
gifts and your callings make room for you.
Mm-hmm.
And also seeking first the kingdom, right? And all the things will be added to you. And I
Yeah.
think the king is the kingdom and everything that he does.
Come on now.
Um, and for me, so I actually really relate, and I understand also the other side of this is that um, I I genuinely did not think being called to God was enough. I was like, well, yeah, of course, you love me, and but I'm like, but what do you want me to do? Like, I
Mm,
have to do something for you. I have to be doing something. And I think that is part of what he was working out of me was this sense of like, I am good. I am right. I am holy. I am all of these things. I'm in good standing with you if I'm doing the right thing. And he was like, I want you to have relationship with me. I want you to learn to abide to find the fruit and to see the fruit. And honestly that has led me all of this the way that he has led me with that um has it makes sense when I look at like the history of my life and me as a person. And I think that that's something I wanted to point out earlier on was like everybody is different and we're all looking for the same kind of calling. We're all looking for the same kind of like experience of calling, but why? Because he speaks your heart language so fluently.
mm,
Like he knows how to lead you, and I think we just don't trust him to lead.
mm,
We just don't think that he's enough sometimes. And I think that we would never say that obviously, but I think internally we feel like we need to have something to add to the mix. And he's like, I really want is like surrender, obedience, and like you. So for me, calling has been a lot of surrendering and a lot of experiencing God and loving him and letting that love for him drive me to anything that he like all over the world. You like where we are now. And it's the same for you. That love for him drives you, but it has a different language because of who you are and how he speaks to you.
for sure.
And that is important. Like it's not going to be across the board something. And I think that that is honestly where a lot of the youth stuff when we were growing up like failed me and people who didn't hear it like the way that they were expecting. But God speaks. It's not, he got through
I think
to me.
I think for me, I've always had a very clear sense of purpose, sense of
Mhm.
direction in life. I think that our generation,
Mhm.
and maybe the younger generation as well, I don't know, maybe they can speak for themselves, but I'm guessing, but definitely our generation, we really long for purpose. We long for direction.
Everybody does. Yeah.
We long for impact, but
Hmm.
everybody does. But I remember when millennials were millennials, right? I remember when millennials started hitting the job force, there are all these articles about how, millennials want some sort of greater purpose tied to their job. Like it's a lot of people are not content to just work for a paycheck. They want to make sure, they want to know that there's some kind of bigger picture. They want to know that there's some kind of bigger impact. And so I think there's more people nowadays who are trying to find, what am I born for? What am I meant to do? Than maybe previous generations.
Yeah, I think that's And I think that it's really hard when you grow up in with the kind of language of find your calling, and it feels like everybody needs to have a missions calling, or everybody needs to be called to the church, or some kind of overt ministry thing, and everybody who's not takes like kind of a lower seat, at the table. And I think there was definitely that feeling of like, okay, like if I'm not called to ministry, then like I'm, yeah, just didn't. We It was an interesting for me to navigate because I didn't really know. I had no definition, ministry or not, of where I was called. All I knew was if I looked back over all of the things in my life leading up to that point, I didn't have dreams and visions and things like that. I just had friendship with God. And that was the thing that was consistently throughout my life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I didn't have like directional anything. It was, I remember my childhood lived with God. And I remember books of the Bible that he highlighted to me, like Song of Solomon at a young age, or Hosea, certain verses in that at a young age, and things like that. It wasn't a lot of direction. It was a lot more about that connection. And now moving forward and looking at calling, I'm like, wow, yes. I tell people, you are called to God, and because of that, that is the driving force behind what, like, you being able to obey and run after the things that he is assigning you for a season.
Yeah.
And I think that seasons are super important as well, because if we're just like, okay, we don't know. I think we say yes sometimes. We have no idea how long that yes is going to carry through, right? To like how many years. When we decided to come to Asia, I thought it was 1 year. And I remember 3 or 4 years down the road, I was like, you ambushed me. I tell God,
Tricked
you
me.
tricked me. I thought it was a year. You tricked me. And like, as I went further in, I'm like, all right, we're doing this thing like this. But I would revisit that yes over and over and over again. I remember for a while, every year we'd be like, okay, what about this next year? Do you want us here? Do you want us somewhere else? And always going back to that
I,
because it was about his voice.
I still revisit
Yeah,
that
I do too.
regularly.
Yes.
God, am I still in the assignment? Is there a different assignment? Am I still, is this still the
Mm-hmm.
thing? Yes. Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
Let's keep going.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah. And there
I,
was an assignment. There was a year where we were literally, God took us back to Reading to work.
but there's not an identity. Here's the thing. There's not an identity attached to
No.
the assignment. The identity is I'm called to God. I am the beloved.
Yeah.
I'm the bride.
Yeah.
I'm the friend. I'm
Yes.
the son,
Yes. And
right?
yes. And I
I'm
think
the
that,
servant. It's
mm-hmm.
this is who I am, and I am called to him.
Yeah.
And day by day, season by season, he can do whatever he wants with me. I
Yes.
have signed a blank check to say I preemptively say yes to whatever you've got.
Mm-hmm.
Do what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Speak and I'll follow. Show me the assignments. If you say rest, I'm going to rest. If you say
Mm-hmm.
work, I'm going to work,
Mm-hmm.
right? Being called to God doesn't mean that you're just sitting around, right?
I think it is the opposite usually.
It's active. It's like
Extremely
Jesus is very active.
so
Like he got a
active.
lot done,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Still does. He even said my father's always working. So you called to the father. Like there's a lot of activity and work that happens, but
Mm-hmm.
it's coming from that place of abiding, and so it kind of happens naturally.
I mean, look at the seasons in Jesus's life. If he had been like, I mean, he had a clear assignment, maybe the person with the clearest assignment ever, you know,
Mm,
but he had a season where he's growing up, where he is studying under his earthly father, right? Like
yeah.
learning carpentry, like that could have really derailed him if he had that perspective of like my identity, like I'm like supposed to be doing this. How is this feeding into that? I don't understand.
Yeah.
Or Paul, look at Paul. Like there was, after he, had his conversion, and then what was it, 12 years, like before he was actually like doing ministry and walking out. I mean, these are people who went through
14 years.
seasons,
Yeah.
14 years,
Yeah.
14 years. These are people who went through seasons that looked so different from what you would expect, and they're barely mentioned in the Bible, right? They were not recorded in
Yeah,
depth and
it'll be
detail
like
day by
a little
day.
sentence or something like
Yeah,
that.
it's
Just
barely there.
not going into detail.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think about that sometimes. I think that we get really discouraged by seasons, and I think when that happens, it's because we've in those moments, at least for me, those seasons, I when I felt discouraged about what I'm doing, and is this actually like maybe the dreams I had were wrong, or maybe what God was speaking to me, I missed it or something.
Here's something. We have a prophetic direction. We have all these prophetic words, and what if our life doesn't look that like that right now? Like this happens a lot, right?
Yeah,
People get prophetic words, and they're like, well, so all these need to happen now. They're all kind of squashed together. It's like, I'm not doing the thing that God said. What is that? But there's timing. Like I think of it as spiritual depth perception. Like timing really matters. And talking about prophetic words,
oh gosh, this is a
you
big
get into
subject.
the no, well, you get into the stories in the Bible, and there are people who were promised things, prophetic words given to people that were
That's-
literally not even fulfilled until further generations. Like
this is
their
what I was gonna
actual
say.
descendants
Yes,
lived in the fulfillment of that promise. And I'm
that
like, is God doing that to some of us sometimes? Like,
yes, I think
is that
yes.
possible? Wow.
Don't you want
Um,
that though? Like I think that if we don't see the power and the beauty in that, like we're missing something about um legacy and family and just the power of God through generations of your family. That is beautiful. But we often do expect, right, those words to be fulfilled in our lifetime, and we feel discouraged when we don't see it. But
not
in
just in our
reality,
lifetime, like
like
this year. Like, oh,
yeah,
I'm already 30 years old and I'm not living in the, not doing
exactly.
XYZ. It's like,
Yes.
okay, maybe
Yeah.
some of those things are for
Yeah.
20 years from
Or
now, or,
maybe it's for your grandchildren.
yeah,
And you saying yes now is actually what is setting the stage for that. Look at Abraham.
could be.
So
Let's not use that as a cop out, though,
it's
to
not
not do
I don't
anything. And
think
that's the thing.
anybody's
It's
going
like,
to use that.
oh, well, everything God's said to me is for a future
No, there's
generation.
action, there's yes. And I think that that is what I'm coming back to over and over and over again, is that when we see our calling is to God, when we value our calling because of the voice that it's coming from,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's a calling. It's a call me by name, calling, Laci, like come, do this. It's because the reason that that is profound and powerful is because of the person it's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
I'm running to that calling because whose voice it's coming from.
That's right.
And with that in mind, the more that I'm surrendered to that, and the more that I value the person that that calling is coming from, the easier it is for me to remain surrendered in seasons, and easier it is for me to be like not discouraged or lose hope when I don't see a fulfilled promise in immediately, or when like and I feel like that probably I'm living right now the most surrendered I've ever been, living the right now the most hopeful I've ever been in. I've had encounter over and over and over with his faithfulness, and I just know, like, I feel joy when if he says, like, if he gives me a word and I'm still waiting for it to be fulfilled. When I think about my grandchildren being the ones, or my children, our sons being the ones who experience the fulfillment of that, that gives me more joy than
Wow.
if I were, because I'm like, that voice of God, that calling is extending, that is not dependent on my life, it's extending past me. My yes is securing generations of yes to God.
That's actually pretty cool.
And
I've never thought of it from that angle. You think about some of the
so
prophetic words that
amazing.
have, things God's spoken to you, prophetic words you received, that kind of thing. You picture, okay, your kids
Mm-hmm.
living that out, your grandchildren
It's
living that out. That's like,
beautiful.
wow, that's amazing.
And to me, that's where I'm like, okay, let's bring all of this back and live today for him. Be
Hmm.
called today. God, what are you calling me to today? And practice living surrendered, because that's really the call. It's not more complicated than that. And when you've practiced surrender that much, then the big things don't feel big at all. They feel natural. Like, oh
Yep.
wow, this is a big pivot for my life, like moving to Asia. I never saw that coming at all for me. But it was when I let go of that traditional description of calling, an idea of what it could look like, that I was like, actually, like, I do want to partner with Joel for the rest of my life. And I actually feel free and joyful about my future now, because I can just focus on the person. And that's how, honestly, even like miracles and other things come for me too. I'm like, it's really about the person of Jesus.
Yeah.
And I get to enter into his joy for a person, his love for somebody. And that makes every single, miracle, testimony, everything like that just so intimate, so bursting with encounter, not just for the person who's experiencing a healing touch, for example, but also for me,
Mm.
because it's about the person.
So I do want to give some keys to finding that direction, finding the assignment. What does that look like? Because there are, like, yes, we're called to God, but there are still, times when we might feel a little bit lost or stuck, right? So how do you get out of that?
Mm-hmm.
How do you find that clarity? And so I want to share some keys that I've found. Um,
Mm-hmm.
First thing, do what Jesus said. And dude, the other stuff will fall in place, right? If you're looking for a word, you're looking for a dream or a vision, do what's written in the
Yeah, he
Bible.
gave
Like,
pretty clear
seriously.
instructions.
Yes, there's 30
Yeah.
something commands of Jesus. Just do those things. Boom. And it's all gonna fall into place, man. Another one is stewardship. Stewardship is a big deal. What's in your hands
Mm-hmm.
right now? I remember before we moved overseas, I had this core value that I'm not going to go do ministry across the world without doing it here first in America, in my hometown, in this kind of place. I'm going to do it here first if I want to do it over there. And so, serving the poor, sharing the gospel,
Yeah.
healing the sick, these kind of things, I'm going to go after it here. Because if I'm not bearing fruit here, what makes me think I would go over there and bear fruit? If I'm not stewarding
Mm-hmm.
the kingdom, he's given me access to the kingdom. If I'm not stewarding the access he's given me the kingdom here, then why would I be trusted with it over there, right? You steward what you have and then more is given. What do you have in your hands? That's the first thing.
Yeah.
Another one is to reflect on some things in the past that can be very clarifying. And, uh, first one would be dreams, visions, direct words from God to you that marked you or guided you in a specific way. Like, really take some time and go through that. What is your history with the Lord? What are the
Yeah.
dreams he's given you? I'm
Yeah.
talking about dreams at night, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what are the visions he's given you? What are the prophetic words that have been recurring?
Yep.
Okay.
And I would add to that also, making a note of like how he has spoken to you. It's not that he doesn't switch that up, but like I think that's really helpful. Like, oh God, I see a pattern that like this is how you draw me
Mm-hmm.
to you, and paying attention to that.
That'll help you to figure out what he's even saying is by
Yeah,
paying
like in the
attention
time
to
that
how
you're
he does speak to you.
confused about things, or you feel like you're not hearing something, like paying attention to how he's spoken to you in the past, and if there's a pattern in that, it's just like hearing his voice, right? Like we want to know our calling, we need to hear his voice.
Yep.
And so how does he draw me out? And it's not that he won't break that pattern, because he does, but also like there's consistency and like a way that he speaks to you a lot of times. Like for
Yep.
me, it's a very like deep, and it's hard for me even to explain. It's just a knowing,
Mm-hmm.
pulling, drawing,
Mm-hmm.
feeling and voice in my heart and my head.
So, first one is dreams, visions, direct words from God that marked you or guided you in a specific way. Second one is what are significant, like especially significant or recurring prophetic words that people are always giving you this same prophetic word. Pay attention to that.
Mm-hmm.
If it's being repeated so much, like there's probably a reason, God's highlighting something to you. Another one would be pay attention to moments in your life when you felt really alive or a profound sense of purpose, like fully yourself, you're satisfied, you're fulfilled, there's a sense of joy, a sense of purpose. You have the thought, I could live in this moment in some form for the rest of my life. I remember a moment for me, 2010, I was in Haiti and I was with a couple of friends of mine. We're out in the street and we started praying for somebody. and a crowd gathered. There's this crowd of people around, and then boom, person after person began to get healed, and people were getting really excited. This is spontaneous. And I was just openly sharing about the kingdom of God, Jesus' love for them. And I remember in that moment, I was thinking, I could live in this moment in some measure of this for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And how many times has that exact scenario happened over and over and over? And frankly, I'm looking forward to the next time.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Always. Yeah.
So it's like, and what gives you energy rather than taking it from you as well. That's important to pay attention to,
I think so.
you
Yeah.
know?
Mhm.
And then the final one is significant relationships in which you've encountered God, or you sense his leading somehow. Significant relationship. You and I,
Mhm.
there's some significant relationship right there. Pay attention to that.
Yeah.
I think about different friends or leaders or different people that have really, there's something special there.
Yeah.
Like, we are not designed to exist completely as individuals.
Mm-mm.
We're designed to be parts of a body,
Yep.
organs, body parts connected to the rest of the body, benefiting each other, living stones built into a wall.
Mhm.
What are those
Connected.
significant? Absolutely.
We're absolutely completely connected.
What are those significant
Mhm.
relationships? You can pay attention to that. And we've
We've done
made
that a lot.
major,
Yeah.
major decisions based on relationship.
Lots, most of the time. In fact, our move to Phuket was so rare in that we had a direct word from God, move somewhere where you don't have those relationships. And
Yeah,
that was,
but that
he
was
had,
the exception.
but I'm saying like he had to say that directly because otherwise, like, yeah, we do things in relationship. That's a core value for us.
Yep.
And God speaks to us through those relational like connections and stuff. I believe deeply in that connective, like being connected to other people.
We're the body
We're
of
the
Christ.
body.
We're the family of God.
We cannot exist. Like the parts of the body that aren't connected to each other or like are disconnected die, right?
What if
So,
being called to God also means being called to his body?
of course.
Think about that.
Mm.
Which leads into
Heavy
union, which we
revy.
should talk about
Yeah, another time.
another episode.
Yeah. Another thing that I would add to discovering your calling is I want to say that it's okay to be in a season or in a moment where you're unsure about, hey, what is God saying in this moment? I'm not sure what the next step is exactly. And to not be afraid to take steps in that space. And like, I think that I was always really afraid that if I made the wrong decision, like I was going to be embarrassed. I was going to be, I was going to be punished or like I wasn't going to feel God wasn't going to be with me or something like that. And I think that when we're in this space of like trying to hear from God and I think that this particular conversation about calling is really rife with this like sense of like, okay, it's an identity thing. It's been an identity thing, but that's why it's so important that the calling is to God because your identity is in him.
Mm-hmm.
And he is not going to embarrass or punish you if you take a step towards something wanting to hear him. Like to me, that is like he's not disconnected in those moments. And so I would say if you're struggling and you feel like I still don't have a sense of exactly where, just like Joel said, like do what he's already said in the Bible, like where you're at, stewarding the thing that you have.
You're unclear. So what if you just, all right, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, so I'm going to go find a sick person to pray for?
Yeah.
Or I don't know what supposed to be doing, so I'm going to go find an enemy to show love to.
Yeah. I'm just going to live my life.
I'm going to do what he said.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah,
Come on now.
it's massive. I mean, imagine the impact of that. And I think, I mean, there's so much to say about this. There's so much to say about how people have been set up for like failure really in the like sense of like I need to do this thing to make this massive impact when in reality like God is asking for like just each moment, small things like not like big like mountaintop experience after mountaintop experience over and over and over and over again. Like that's just every moment becomes a holy moment when you're just surrendered to him.
I am frequently in the position of, or not frequently, but it's happened a lot. Okay. Where I'm like, I think God's leading me to do this thing. I don't feel 100% confident, but I'll say to God, I'm like, God, I think this is what you're saying, so I'm going to do it. And this is
Yes.
obedience.
Yes.
Okay. And if I'm wrong,
Help me out.
just acknowledge that, like, this is me trying to do what you said.
Yes, totally.
And maybe
Totally.
make up the difference if I'm off base. But this is coming from a desire to obey, you know?
Yeah. Okay. And I would say also that this, and this is really the last thing that I have to say. This has played itself out in motherhood for me in a really beautiful way. I've walked out I'm called to God in this season of being a mother to young children, because when my whole description, like my job description, let's say, or like all of the things that I do get turned on their head when you become a mom. Like there's so much other random things that you have to do that you didn't expect that take up so much time and effort and energy. And because I knew I'm called to God, suddenly all those small things that were that are so like a part of motherhood, changing diapers, washing dishes, waking up in the middle of the night, breastfeeding babies, like all of the things that seem so hidden and so unglamorous and even like looked down on by society or by whatever, just things that we would even look down on as like nothing moments. Like, because I knew and I was secure in my, like, I am called to God, like even in this season, this is like my assignment from God. Those moments became massively filled with like the presence of God. Like some of my most holy like worship moments, and even leading worship moments as a worship leader, some of my favorite times leading worship in my life have been laying on the floor of our kids' rooms singing while they're falling asleep for hours because they need me in there. And I'm like, God, here I am. Like, I'm just going to lead my children in worship. I'm just going to love you laying on the floor next to their bed. Like, and I honestly and truly like feel like a portal to heaven was opened up in that room because of that, like giving that moment to him and recognizing that, like, okay, like my assignment in this season has changed, but like my calling to God is just as strong as ever. It is still like there's like the foot is on the gas pedal. Like we are charging still after the man called Jesus. Like that has not changed at all, no matter what season I've been in my life. And it has actually opened up so much to me in my life in moments that previously, if I'd had the other like perspective on calling, I would have felt like I was losing. Even though I was gaining such beautiful things with my kids, like I would feel like I'm losing this part of myself or this part of my identity or this part of my life. I hope that I'm, giving God enough right now. In reality, I felt like, dude, I am like that's when I learned how to seamlessly connect all these moments of my day as worship to him.
And in that moment, there's this awareness of, I'm called to God right now. My assignment, help my kids fall asleep.
Yeah. And it feels, and it honestly and truly, it feels powerful in full burst. I felt bursting with vision for motherhood.
Yeah.
And I still do. And then my season shifted and I was back doing admin work and I was like, that was a whole other shift. Like I was like, okay, like now I'm like crying in Starbucks while I, pump out like administrative work because I'm also giving that to God. And to me, calling is and living in your calling. If you're called to God, it's just living every moment for him.
Yeah.
And that means it doesn't matter. There's no higher calling. There's no like better, more like holy calling or whatever. It's just whatever he has for you. You can be in any vocation, but your calling is the same as everybody's. It's to him.
Absolutely. We're called to God. Thanks for joining us. We're out of time, right?
Yeah, I think
We're out of time. Thanks for joining us. If you got something out of this, go ahead and subscribe, follow along with us. Let us know in the comments any thoughts or questions. If you want to get in touch with us, there should be a link in the description, so you can use that to contact us. Subscribe. Yeah, if you want.
No.
Or not. Do whatever.
No.
Or just
do it.
Do it even if you don't want to.
Do it if you don't want to.
There you go. Nice. All right. God bless you guys.